our opening keynote, his profile's in the book. I'm not going to read it, it's there for you to see. Done a bit of homework on Kim Stevens though, and basically he's been a pioneer in the world of water management. His water balance theory stuff when it first happened, he didn't get pilloried, but he didn't have a whole lot of supporters in what he was trying to do. So like all pioneers, he raised plenty of eyebrows. But like all pioneers who really believed in what they were doing, he kept going with it and going with it. You have a look at what's been achieved and how his thinking now is basically mainstream. I think it's a credit to Kim and his team, and we're really excited about what he has to offer. Ladies and gentlemen, Kim Stevens.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for the great warm-up in terms of getting this audience. I feel like I'm in Las Vegas, and here I am, I'm on the runway, and you're all kind of expecting some tricks. But I'm not Jay Leno or any of those characters, or whatever. But it really is a pleasure to be here in Australia. And when I first got the email out of the blue, I guess it was from Julie, asking me about whether I would be interested. Of course I said yes, right? Because I'm a glutton for punishment. I never say no. But also I reflected on the fact, and this is the significance of the title, Parallel Journeys to a Resilient Future, and water cycle, because that's the term you tend to use, water balance approaches in Australia and British Columbia, 2001 to 2016. The reason or the significance of 2001 is that in 2001, I was invited to, actually it was the Hunter Valley, to a 3-day local government capacity building session in Newcastle. And it was kind of a critical moment for us because at that point, I came and I talked about overcoming fear and doubt. That was our situation, overcoming fear and doubt in terms of making a major change in how we approached hydrology, reinventing urban hydrology. And it was kind of coincident with changes that were taking place in Australia. So it really is good to come back after 15 years and be able to reflect on where we were, where you were, and where we are both today. And and we are moving. All of us are moving in the world. We all are moving towards the same destination, the same goal, but we have our own pathways. I think that's the difference. How we get there is a little bit different. And in terms of, I like quotable quotes. So I went through Andrew's, message from the president in the program, looking for the one sentence that would really capture, for my purposes, how to kick this thing off. And so again, what do you see there? These are Andrew's words. Challenge and change brings opportunity. That was, a phrase I just found embedded in his write-up. And then I looked for that one sentence. And so what I've done here is I've underlined the action verbs. So this conference will reach out, right? Reach out beyond the core industry. And that's the significance that when Chris mentioned my question to him about, so what does the makeup of this audience look like? And when he asked you for a show of hands, half the people were coming to your first conference. And the fact that only about half of this audience here are engineers, and you've got a mix. So that's important. So reaching out beyond, engaging with a broader group of committed and talented people. Well, that's what we're all trying to do, and who will need to work together to develop the solutions for the future. So in telling my story or telling our story, because it's not really my story, it's the story of what we're trying to do in British Columbia, hopefully, maybe, you'll do your own connecting the dots and something will go aha, and everybody in this room will have a different aha. And I've often reflected on audiences the fact that, you never know, they'll look at these faces, who will hear something and will go, that speaks to me. That speaks to me. And I will do something differently. Because that's the challenge we always offer to people, or challenge people, which is, what will you do differently when you leave this room today? And that's the significance of when Andrew talked about the call to action. The new normal. You're using that phrase here, aren't you? The new normal? It's become sort of part of the language in the last year for us. And this is a screenshot from the end of the year when I was doing a number of interviews in British Columbia, because Note the caption, drought. Most people think that it rains all the time in British Columbia. Well, it does rain a lot, but drought was a top story of last year. And what surprised me about it being voted the top story of the year is that I thought by Christmas, it was snowing and people were talking about skiing, and the drought had ended in September, October. That I thought the population's memory would be short-lived, but they remembered. And they voted the top story. So something has clicked in the psyche of British Columbians. But coming back to preparing for today, for this moment, Andrew's right. He did give me this long list of names. He generated a long list of names, and we had a number of Skype phone conversations, and we went the list down to these 7 people, and I see that John Argue is in the back of the room there, and I see Peter Coombs. Where's Tony Weber? Tony Weber? I think you're the only 3 that are here. I think the rest of them, I know Bill Till wanted to be here, but Helen, you're here representing WA. And anyway, so these conversations with practitioners, they've helped me see your world through your eyes. And I kind of categorize this as a continuum of perspectives. And Andrew said compare and contrast. Well, actually, I'm not going to compare and contrast. What I am going to do in telling my story, telling our story, our BC story, really try and pick up on themes which came out in those conversations to kind of give you some insight into what we're doing. So again, it's our story. I'm not saying we're better than you or worse than you. I'm just saying this is our story. This is the pathway we've gone down. And maybe there are lessons learned that you can take away from what I say today. But there were overarching themes that came through in those conversations. And the first one was the water balance. And in discussing with my colleagues in BC, what I was learning from the conversations with John Argue and Tony Weber, and we said, we really got to go back to basics here and ask the question, what is your starting point for mimic the water balance? Because we use these words, but they have different meanings to people. And I often, in presentations back home, will say, in elementary school, primary school, everyone learns about the water balance, but by high school, they've forgotten. And yet it's so fundamental to think of those kind of basic concepts. The other question which came out in these conversations, and I have to be candid with you, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around what you guys are doing here in terms of water utilities, because in British Columbia and in Canada as a whole, water is a common good. It's just the way we think, and we resist any efforts to commoditize it in any way, to price it, to trade it, you name it. But you seem to have gone down a different pathway in terms of how your utilities are structured. I'm not proposing to take my time today to get into the ins and outs of that. Just that's what really caught my attention. But in terms of, I do want to leave you with some big ideas today. And one of the big ideas is 20 years ago, 1995, Daniel Pauly, a well-known global fisheries scientist, coined the phrase, the shifting baseline syndrome. How many people in this audience have even heard of that phrase? 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. Do I hear 5? No. But and the reason I glommed onto that his work, and actually it was my son who said, "Dad, you gotta watch Daniel Pauly's TED Talk," because 2 years ago I was about to embark on a cross-Canada workshop tour to share our story. And when I heard Daniel Pauly speak to this, I thought, that's perfect, because it will allow me to talk to the other provinces about where we are on the curve of British Columbia versus where they are. In other words, we're all different. We're all different points. But what started happening in that process was realizing it's a really powerful image when you stop and think about it in terms of why is it with each generation, we see the world as it is now. And we lack an appreciation for what came before. And you'll see there that what he said was the curve represents a succession of changes. Each generation adjusts its baseline to the new level. And really what he was trying to capture in this very simple graphic was why we allow things to incrementally degrade. So initially he was coming at it from a global fisheries point of view, but as he said, it can apply to anything. So that made me think, what we were trying to accomplish in British Columbia, and why we were different from the other provinces. And what started to come out of this was the fact that about 20 years ago, we made a decision, it seems. It's kind of happened in a way, as part of our top-down, bottom-up approach, that we could reset the ecological baseline. And it's taken us 2 decades to begin, and we're only at the beginning of the journey, but we're beginning to sort of see how we can get there and how we need to change the standards of practice that got us into the mess that we've been in for the last 50 years and actually restore things to a desired watershed condition. And it takes time, and it takes commitment, and it takes perseverance. But we've already begun to see the paybacks, because the initiatives that were initiated in the 1990s, for us, the symbols in the Metro Vancouver region is the orca whale. That's our symbol, and the dolphins. And the last couple of years, they're back. Right? So we've done something right that they're back. And the fact that images on the news of the orca whale breaching, off the shores of Vancouver, the media covered, and it stirs a reaction from people. And in our case, what makes us different from the other regions in terms of the salmon, which is our icon, it's the canary in the coal mine, is that if there's a problem with the salmon, then we have a problem and we need to deal with it. And that's what we've been doing for the last 20 years. So that's kind of my warm-up of the big part of the picture. In terms of the rest of my presentation, really I've organized it into these 4 modules, elaborating on the new normal in British Columbia, Water Balance 101. This is the only technical part, or semi-technical part, of my presentation today, just to go back so that we get on the same page as far as language and what we mean. And then convening for action in British Columbia. That's our mantra. Coming back to what I said a few minutes ago. When you leave this room, what will you do differently? That's called convening for action. And that's why when I first talked to Andrew, I said, what is it you're trying to accomplish today? Is it just to come and have a good time and have a good time, or do you want people to leave and do something differently? And then I'm going to close with sustainable watershed systems. So Chris, that's your cue. So I better be, with 5 minutes to go, I better be about to start that last module.